Hello, I'm Glenda Shawley from Fabulous Networking. When did you last review your understanding of your ideal client? I believe this is something that we need to do on a regular basis, at least annually, because people change and what influences their buying decisions can change. So we've been talking recently about our ideal clients in 2023, and I'm going to share some of the research that I did to prompt those conversations, hoping that you'll find it useful. So looking at some of the customer trends in 2023, during the pandemic, there was a lot of conversation about the new normal and returning to where we used to be. People are setting their own new normals, and not everybody has gone back to what they used to do before. They've changed their behaviours, and perhaps they're a bit more individual than they were before the pandemic. People are looking for change, and they're looking for balance, and they're looking to escape the overwhelm that so many of us have been feeling for so long. I think the pandemic gave us more insight into how we could perhaps have more of a balance between our working lives and our home lives. The working from home that allowed workers to be more involved in their children's lives, for instance, that allowed them perhaps to be able to undertake some hobbies more easily. So people have been setting their own new normal based on their experience over the last 2 or 3 years and what they want to achieve going forward. We've become more intentional in our buying, and that is partly driven by the cost of living crisis, but also has things to do with the sustainability agenda. And also people are more keen to buy local. Again, partly driven by the sustainability agenda and partly driven by the fact that during the pandemic, we actually found more local solutions than perhaps we were aware of pre-pandemic. And we've continued to want to buy from those and to support our local enterprises. There's more of a focus on women's empowerment and women coming to the fore and the seeing women more as decision makers and leaders. There's also a feeling that people want more community. They want to feel that they belong to something. And I guess that's perhaps a reaction to the isolation that so many of us felt during the COVID pandemic. And gamification is something that's been being talked about for a few years now, but people wanting perhaps a little bit more fun in their lives, and perhaps things like advertising that involves games or learning offered in a way that is more akin to a game, and that can be online or offline games, is perhaps more to people's taste. People are unsubscribing from their regular subscriptions in quite a big way. We've heard a lot about people unsubscribing from the likes of Netflix and Amazon Prime and other streaming services. In fact, 62.3% from one survey had cancelled one or more services. Again, that's a lot to do with the cost of living crisis, but also perhaps people don't have quite the same need for streaming services as they did during the pandemic. But it might also indicate that the move towards subscriptions and the subscription model has perhaps had its day. I know it was something that has been talked about a lot for businesses and as a business model over time, because it gives a bit of certainty about our income on a monthly basis. But people perhaps have woken up to the fact that they're paying out these subscriptions without necessarily making the most of them. And the cost of living crisis has forced them to look at where their expenditure is going. And the current focus on AI is showing us what trends may be developing for the future, and it is suggested that AI will become a co-pilot for creativity. And I don't know if you've seen the Canva New Era presentation this month, where they've launched an awful lot of changes and enhancements, or possible enhancements, to what they offer using AI to automate and give people ideas for what they do or what they want to create. Continuing the look on customer trends in this year, people are still going to the shops. They're still tending to do sport once a week, whether that's watching or participating, but they're eating out less often than they did. Our diets are getting worse because of budget constraints. And this might represent an opportunity for nutritionists and people in the food industry, perhaps to be able to show the rest of us how to eat well for less, and what we can do to make sure that our diets, the budget constraints don't necessarily have to impact on our diets, by just showing us some of the things that we can do to keep a healthy element to those diets. And post-pandemic, not everybody has gone back to the office. So in one survey, it was suggested that 44.6% of workers work from home at least once a week, and 12% work at home all week. Certainly, there's a look for people wanting to have more flexibility over their working lives and perhaps to spend more of it at home. Secondhand is gaining in popularity and acceptability. Again, this might be partly driven by the cost of living crisis, but also it's to do with more people being concerned about the environment and sustainability. And so many of us have given things to charity shops, but also there are new platforms like Vinted, for example, that make selling on the things we no longer have use for so much easier, and a way of making money, but also a way of people buying things for less and buying perhaps more ethically. So people, alongside this, people are buying less, and again, that's part money and part environmental concerns. And that's causing some people to moving to buying less but better. So moving towards buying better quality that will last them longer, but buying less of it. Also, people are tending to do more research before they're buying. We've often talked about considered purchases, and the customer buying journey for a considered purchase has always been much longer than that for an impulse purchase. But the indications are that what constitutes a considered purchase now has a much lower threshold than it did a few years ago. So people are taking more time and more steps when they're buying something which is of much lower value than they used to give such a lot of thought to. And again, that can be partly money driven, but it can also be about wanting to make better choices for the environment and for the future. So we looked a little bit at attitudes as well. Now, Gen Z is redefining how life is lived. They want flexible work. They want to be able to live life on their own terms. They're not like, I was, and so many of us of my generation, looking for a job for life, and going out to work, typical, standard hours, standard weeks, coming home, and separate work and life being separate. These days, they want to combine both. Young people tend to be more positive than the baby boomers. I think perhaps baby boomers have grown up with that old message, you've never had it so good. And probably we've now realized that actually it won't be so good in the future. Whereas young people perhaps haven't had that experience that we had, where so much was booming, so much was brilliant. They've grown up to a much more volatile, troubled world. and perhaps they're more positive, or they can put a more positive spin on things. And it's said that Britons want more reassurance. So young people like motivational messages, older people like humour. But we want to feel cared for, and we want to feel that everything's going to be okay. And there is a suggestion that people want brands to be more political in their messaging. They want to know what brands stand for more than they did. And that is especially around poverty and inequality. Gen Z want to tackle racism, but there are more raised voices against injustice, and people want to see the businesses that they support tackling injustice and trying to achieve a better world, I guess. And there's an increased focus on what we can control and ignoring what we can't. So, people are just getting involved with the things that they feel they can make a decision about. And if it's too big and too complex for them, they're ignoring it. Fast fashion is becoming less popular. This goes back to what I was saying earlier about people buying less and some buying better, and Vinted and other resale platforms coming to the fore to allow people to refresh their own wardrobes without there being a need to produce so much more. And I think that move towards the circular economy, which is very much tackling the fashion industry and looking at how we have less disposable fashion, but we make things that can be recycled, repurposed, and where longevity is designed in from the outset. You probably won't be surprised to hear that people are becoming more cautious in their spending, and that's across all year groups. And that will, to a large extent, be driven by the cost of living crisis, but may also, again, have a foothold in sustainability. Brand loyalty is decreasing. People are looking at the other things that are of concern to them, which is probably about value, it's probably about ethics, and it's probably about the way things are delivered. But they're not necessarily sticking with the brands that they have always bought from, which provides both an opportunity and a threat, depending on your business. Many are looking for more flexible payment options too, obviously to manage the expenditure that's going out, and control what they can cope with on a monthly basis. And instability is now accepted as a new normal. We've had 2+ years of the pandemic, then we've got war in Europe, and now we've got the cost of living crisis, and there will be more things coming down the track in the future. We've accepted that. We're learning to live with it, and we're adapting our behaviours around that too. So what does this mean for you? Do these trends reflect what you have observed with your clients? Do any of these ideas make you want to redefine your ideal client, or how you group them? Do you want to think about the products or services that you're offering to meet the needs of your ideal clients going forward? I hope this quick overview of some of the trends that have emerged from a variety of different pieces of research that I found over the last week, and we're talking about a week in March 2023, will help you to think about your ideal client and maybe what tweaks you need to make to your understanding of them and how you meet their needs. Thanks for watching, and I wish you luck with your businesses going forward.